Two old men decide they are close to their last days and decide to have a last night on the town. After a few drinks, they end up at the local The madam takes one look at the two old geezers and whispers to her manager, "Go up to the first two bedrooms and put an inflated doll in each bed. These two are so old and drunk. I'm not wasting two of my girls on them. They won't know the difference." The manager does as he is told, and the two old men go upstairs and take care of their business. As they are walking home, the first man says, "You know, I think my girl was dead." "Dead?" says his friend. "Why do you say that?" "Well, she never moved or made a sound all the time I was loving her," his friend says. "Could be worse, I think mine was a witch." "A witch? Why would you say that?" "Well, I was making love to her, kissing her on the neck, and I gave her a little bite. Then she farted and flew out the window. Took my teeth with her." A little boy had just started school. When he came home after his first day, his mom asked, "Mom, Billy, what did you learn today?" Billy, "I learned to write." Mom, "Oh, what did you write?" Billy, "I don't know. I haven't learned to read yet." There was this couple that had been married for 20 years. Every time they made love, the husband always insisted on shutting off the light. Well, after 20 years, the wife felt this was ridiculous. She figured she would break him out of this crazy habit. So one night, while they were in the middle of a wild, screaming romantic session, she turned on the lights. She looked down and saw her husband was holding a battery-operated please_your device, a vibrator. Soft, wonderful, and larger than a real one. She went completely ballistic. "You impotent Baz_tard," she screamed at him. "How could you be lying to me all of these years? You better explain yourself." The husband looks her straight in the eyes and says calmly, "I'll explain the toy, you explain the kids." A lady lost her handbag in the bustle of Christmas shopping. It was found by an honest little boy and returned to her. Looking in her purse, she commented, That's funny. When I lost my bag, there was a $20 bill in it. Now, there are $21 bills." The boy quickly replied, "That's right, lady. The last time I found a lady's purse, she didn't have any chance for a reward." A teacher was giving a lesson on the circulation of blood. Trying to make the matter clearer, he said, "Now class, if I stood on my head, the blood, as you know, would run into it and I should turn red in the face." "Yes, sir," the class said. "Then why is it that while I am standing upright in an ordinary position, the blood doesn't run into my feet?" Johnny shouted. "'Cause your feet ain't empty." A woman came up behind her husband while he was enjoying his morning coffee and slapped him on the back of the head. "I found a piece of paper in your pants pocket with the name Marilou written on it," she said, furious. "You had better have an explanation." "Calm down, honey," the man replied. "Remember last week when I was at the dog track? That was the name of the dog I bet on." The next morning, his wife snuck up on him and smacked him again. "What was that for?" he complained. "Your dog called last night." Clark Kent was lying in his deathbed with his wife Lois Lane beside him. After some time, Lois said, "Darling, I have to confess something. Years ago, I had an affair with Superman. It was only one night, but I've regretted it ever since. I hope you can forgive me." "You don't need to worry about that because," Clark said as he took off his glasses, "I am Superman. Even if you didn't know it was me, in my eyes, you were always faithful." "Oh, thank God," said Lois. "I can't tell you what a weight that is off my chest." "Glad we cleared that up," whispered Clark. "That makes two of us." Smiled Lois. "I guess this means you were Batman too." Jenny was sitting reading her favorite magazine when suddenly an ad pops for an all-expenses-paid cruise for the low price of $500. She excitedly goes to Jack, her husband, and shows him the ad. "Look, Jack," she says, "it's in 2 days and only $500. "I'll be honest with you," said her husband. "I have too much work for a cruise. How about you go and have a good time?" His wife is a bit disappointed, but bounces back and decides she will have a good time anyway. The next day, Jack is in his office when his co-worker, who is also his mistress, comes to him excitedly. "Look, Jack," she says, "there's this cruise tomorrow that is on sale, only $500. "I'm really not into cruises, to be honest," replies Jack. "Here's $500. Why don't you go and have a good time?" She agrees to do just so, and as it turns out, both his wife and his mistress ended up going on the same cruise. A few days later, his wife comes back from the cruise. As she tells him how much fun she had, she shows him photos she took. While looking them over, Jack notices that his lover Brenda is in some of the photos in the background. He points to her and asks his wife, "Who's she?" "Oh, her," sniffs his wife disdainfully. "I call her the cruise slut because she slept with half of the men there." The next day, Jack goes to the office and gets the same excited story, accompanied by photos from his mistress Brenda. Once again, he sees a familiar face in some of the photos, his wife. He then points to his wife and asks Brenda, "Who is she?" "Oh, her," says Brenda. "She's such a nice woman with all the men on board. She never left her husband's side for a second." A woman's closet door was making terrible sounds whenever a bus was crossing the street outside, so she called a carpenter to check it out. The carpenter comes to see what's the problem, but sees nothing. Right then, a bus is crossing the street, and a loud creaking sound is heard coming from the closet. He can't believe it. So strange. Says the carpenter to the wife. "How unusual. Perhaps if I sit inside before the next bus comes, I can see what's making such a noise inside." The wife thinks it's a good idea, if sorry for his time. The carpenter goes inside the closet and gets comfortable, looking at the wood. A few minutes later, the husband arrives home. While the wife is in the bathroom, he goes into the bedroom and opens the closet. To his shock, there's a man sitting inside. He throws a look to the bathroom and then slowly turns his face to the carpenter with murder in his eyes. "What the heck are you doing in my house? In my closet?" he growls ominously. "Ah, well." The carpenter swallows nervously. "Would you believe me if I told you I'm waiting for the bus?" I've lived a few years in my home, and the pretty neighbor next door and I always flirted with each other, despite her being married. One day, when speaking to her husband, he said, "I need to have my apartment painted, but I work all day and I get tired." I tried to hire a professional painter, but the guy asked me for an arm and a leg. At that moment, I just had a brilliant idea. Don't sweat it, neighbor. I'm on vacation and painting walls is my favorite hobby. It would be a pleasure to do this task. The husband accepted the offer gladly. I don't want to brag about my conversation skills, but I barely started to paint the apartment, and I already had that woman in bed with me. But bad luck. We were just starting, and I did not expect the husband to forget his documents, and that, for that reason, he had to return home at that specific moment. The neighbor, listening to her husband opening the door, runs to the bathroom, and the guy enters the room and finds me at the top of the ladder with my brush on the wall, painting. Screaming, he shouts at me, "What the heck is this? You started painting in my bedroom and Hey buddy, I'm working for free, so I start wherever I want." "But you really wanted me to stain my new clothes with paint, and with a boner, you bastard, and just where am I going to hang the darn bucket?" Three married men are sitting in a pool club and arguing over who has the worst marriage. One of the men says, "I have it the worst. My prudish wife won't sleep with me more than once a month. She refuses." The other men shake their heads. One of them asks, "What did you do about it?" The man says, "I slept with that horny blonde over there by the pool table. Unlike my wife, she'll do anything." The men laugh. The second man says, "You think that's bad? My uptight wife won't even sleep with me once a year." The other men shake their heads and one of them asks, "So what did you do about it?" The man says, "I got my rocks off with that same slutty blonde over there by the pool table. She'll literally do any guy." The men laugh. Then the third man says, "That too bad for you guys, but honestly, I definitely have it the worst." The men say, "What's the problem with your wife?" The man says, "Well, for one, she's always down here playing pool." A woman comes home and finds a letter from her husband on the dinner table. She opens it and reads, "My dear wife, you will surely understand that I have certain needs that you, as a 54-year-old, can no longer satisfy. I'm very happy with you, and I value you as a good wife. However, after reading this letter, I hope you will not wrongly interpret the fact that I will be spending the evening with my 18-year-old secretary at the Comfort Inn. Please don't be upset. I shall be back before midnight." When the man came home late that night, he found a reply to his letter on the dining room table. "My dear husband, I received your letter and thank you for your honesty about my being 54 years old. I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that you are also 54 years old. I would like to inform you that, while you read this, I will be at the Hotel Fiesta with Michael, one of my students, who is also an assistant tennis coach. He's young, virile, and, like your secretary, he is 18. You, being a successful businessman with an excellent knowledge of maths, will understand that we are in the same situation, although with one small difference. 18 goes into 54 a lot more times than 54 goes into 18. An elderly gentleman walked into the bank and approached the teller. He handed over his bank card and said, "I'd like to withdraw $20, please." The teller glanced at him and replied, "Sir, for withdrawals under $200, please use the ATM." The old man frowned. "Why is that?" he asked. Irritated, the teller slid the card back to him. "Those are the rules, sir. If you don't need anything else, please step aside. There are other customers waiting." The man remained silent for a moment. Then he handed the card back and said, "All right, I'd like to withdraw all my money instead." The teller sighed, but proceeded to check the account. A moment later, her expression changed. She leaned in and whispered, "Sir, you have $500,000 in your account. The bank doesn't keep that much cash on hand. You'll need to schedule an appointment." The old man nodded. "I see. How much can I withdraw immediately?" $5,000 is the maximum per transaction." The gentleman smiled. "All right, I'll take $5,000 then." Now speaking much more politely, the teller counted out the cash and handed it to him with a warm smile. The old man took $20, placed it in his wallet, and slid the remaining $4,980 back across the counter. "Please deposit this back into my account." Ben walks into Murphy's Diner, just like he has for the past 20 years, and slides into his usual booth. Without even looking at the menu, he orders the same thing he always does: a steaming bowl of the house special soup. The moment it arrives, he rubs his hands together, ready to dig in. But just as he's about to take his first bite, he stops. His brows knit together and he waves over the waiter. Jake, the longtime waiter, ambles over with a knowing smile. "What's up, Ben? Something wrong with the soup?" Ben points at the bowl. "Taste the soup." Jake blinks. "Huh? What's wrong with it?" Ben shakes his head. "Just taste the soup." Jake huffs. "Ben, you've been eating here for 2 decades. You've never had a bad bowl of soup." Ben remains firm. "Taste the soup." Jake sighs, rolling his eyes. All right. If you don't like today's soup, we've got clam chowder, tomato bisque, even a nice beef stew." Ben cuts him off. "I don't want another soup. Just taste this one." Exasperated, Jake finally gives in. He leans down, ready to take a spoonful, then stops mid-motion. "Wait a second. Where's the spoon?" Ben throws up his hands. Exactly! Where's my damn spoon? A 15-year-old Amish boy and his father were visiting a mall for the very first time. Everything seemed like magic, but nothing caught their attention quite like two shiny silver walls that slid apart and then back together again. The boy asked, "What is this, father?" His father, just as puzzled, replied, "Son, I have never seen anything like this in my life. I don't know what it is." As they watched in awe, an older, heavy-set woman in a wheelchair approached, pressed a button and rolled between the moving walls into a small room. The doors closed, and they watched the numbers above the doors light up one by one. They stared as the numbers climbed to the top and then started lighting up in reverse order. When the doors opened again, out stepped a stunning 24-year-old blonde. The father, eyes wide and without breaking his gaze, whispered to his son, "Go get your mother."